I'm joined by Paul Fabara, Chief Risk Officer at Visa. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about the fraud landscape. What were the main challenges of the past, and what are the main challenges now?
So the pandemic accelerated dramatically the rate of adoption of digital credentials. In other words, consumers that normally would have gone into the corner store or brick and mortar now had to quickly adjust to a digital commerce. And that created, of course, a tremendous opportunity for bad actors to attack them in a very sophisticated way. In the past, the majority of the attacks that existed in the ecosystem were single task. In other words, they were looking for credentials that can monetize, PII, personal private information that could monetize in the marketplace. Today, those attacks are a lot more coordinated. They're multi-science, and what I mean by multi-science is they're attacking you on the cyber front as well as traditional fraud, and also on the AML side, all coming around the same time, and that was accelerated by the pandemic.
What are the most pressing and fastest emerging threats in the post-pandemic era?
I would say mainly related to cyber. What happens and what happened over the pandemic is that many businesses that essentially didn't have a digital presence had to build that digital presence in the payments ecosystem. In this case, companies that didn't have the digital commerce engines had to build those. And unfortunately, not all of them were protected in terms of cybersecurity threats. And that became big business for bad actors, penetrating their defenses, getting into their customer bases, and of course, trying to steal and monetize those credentials.
And how do you respond to these threats? What are your top 3 to 5 priorities in doing so?
So we work closely with our clients to provide them with the latest and greatest products and services to be able to protect them in those 3 dimensions, to make sure that at the end of the day, hopefully they are protected from a cyber perspective. And on the cyber side will be to make sure the logical access controls are governized, to make sure that their APIs are fully protected, that their data is devalued, and what I mean by devalued, that it's not all stuck in the same place, so it's more difficult for crooks to take advantage of that. The second component is on the traditional fraud, to make sure that we educate consumers in terms of their responsibility. They don't want to be the weakest link, and we want to make sure that we educate consumers in terms of their responsibilities and what they need to do to protect their credentials, to protect their data. And part of that is we have many of those offerings that we're working directly with our clients to make sure that we protect the ecosystem and to ensure the buyers and sellers can connect safely.
As the Chief Risk Officer at Visa, what would you say your key message to the boardroom is in 2023 and in the years ahead?
We need to continue to invest in terms of what happens in the payments ecosystem. It's getting more complicated with the entrance of new players, fintechs, neobanks, and so on. With the inception of course, crypto, we need to make sure that we continue to invest on our capabilities and our defenses to ensure that we have a safe and secure payments ecosystem.
How would you say that security has evolved in this digital-first world, and what's Visa's approach here?
So first of all, we have spent well over $10 billion over the past 5 years to galvanize all of our lines. And there's 5 principles that we've been really driven in terms of making sure that we become best in class. First is make sure that our logical access controls are best in class. Second, to make sure that all of our internet-based assets are secure. Third is to make sure that we follow the rules of all of the countries where we do business. Fourth is to make sure that at the end of the day, any data that we have in our system is fully protected. And then lastly, and just as important, to make sure that at the end of the day, we have good programs to be able to protect our consumers across the world.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.